All right, joining us today on Pirate Radio Live as we continue on our 2025 ECU football opponent previews. We all know him. He's our friend Corey Gloor down in NOLA, the play-by-play voice of the Tulane Green Wave. Hello, Corey.
Hi. It's the first time we've done this. And so
Yeah.
I wanted just for your visual audience, I wanted to give them a little treat before the audio audience got to hear from me.
There we go. There we go. Great to see you. Great to hear your voice, and always a great time to talk some football. And Corey, before we look ahead, let's look back. I still remember sitting in the studio next door watching Tulane and Kansas State go back and forth. Awesome season opener last year. But it kind of a weird deal where you start 0-2, and then you just reel off all those wins in a row, and then end the season with a few losses in a row. So it was a lot of wins piled up, mixed around some losses in there. But how do you kind of summarize what went down in 2024 for the Green Wave?
I hate to do this to you, Clip. I never want to do this. I'm going to have to correct you. It was 1-1 was the start to the year. 1-2 is where they did wind up before they ripped off. I think they wound up being 9 wins in a row there at the end. 8 wins in a row there, and then lost 3 in a row to end the year. And so it was a little down, then a huge ascent, and then a rough end to the year. And so, yeah, I think you can chop up last year into a tough non-conference schedule with a lot of question marks, particularly with a new coach and figuring out a new quarterback at that time, and then really finding their gear in conference play, which resulted in being a run-first team, and that opened up your quarterback to be one of the most accurate passers in the nation. And then the end of the year left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths here when losing to Memphis on Thanksgiving night, then the championship game at Army, and then the transfer portal hit, and it's a shell of a roster in the bowl game against Florida. And so it was an interesting first year for John Summerall. It followed the similar script that he had in his 2 years at Troy, where it was a tricky non-conference slate that started them 1-2, and then they just roared through conference play, and then the end of the year was a bump. And so with more questions roster-wise this year, but you have the stability of the coaching staff in place, I think there is still lofty goals for what fans are expecting and hoping for this year.
Well, luckily the non-conference schedule lightens up this year, right, Corey?
To say the worst.
No, it does not.
They're one of a handful of teams in the nation without an FCS opponent in their non-conference. They've got Northwestern right off the bat, which is an okay team out of the Big Ten at home to begin the year. Then you go to South Alabama, who's been a pretty strong rival this group in week 2, and then you host Duke right after that, and there's just the major storyline of Tulane quarterback last year now being at Duke and the highest paid player in college football, and Darian Mensah. And so that Saturday night, week 3 here in New Orleans, I'm not sure I've seen this Tulane fan base as excited this far out the football game as that one, because of what happened at the end of last year with Darian Mensah leaving. And then you end the non-conference year at Ole Miss. And so it is a brutal first month of the year for John Summerall before you start diving into conference play. And there are some thorns in the side of conference slate as well, but that first month of the year is as hard as you'll find in the nation.
Yeah, that is, and man, I don't know if I'm jealous of that non-conference schedule or happy that East Carolina doesn't have that non-conference schedule. Somewhere in between, because it is a very attractive one, especially getting a Big Ten and an ACC team going to your house. And as you mentioned, that ACC team is Duke with Mensah, who got a nice payday, and now will take on his old team, Tulane. And Corey, reading about the Tulane quarterback situation was very interesting. Is it as interesting as it sounds? Sounds like a lot of transfers. Sounds like a pretty big name in TJ Finley, but he was suspended indefinitely. So what's his deal? And how do you kind of summarize the quarterback situation right now for Tulane going into 2025?
Interesting's a buzzword in broadcasting. You know that, Clip. And that's a word you use when there's other words that you probably can't use. I don't know if I'd call it interesting. It is messy
A
and
cluster?
it is wild. And you mentioned TJ Finley. He is no longer on the roster because
Okay.
of his suspension in spring, and he is going through some legal things right now. So that was the most seasoned of the bunch that came in for spring, and TJ Finley has been around for a long time. But now you have really a room of four quarterbacks, and they are all fresh into the program this year. Only one of them has some real reps under his belt. That's Caden Samanza, who was the MAC Freshman of the Year last year. But you have two Big Ten quarterbacks that transferred in, and Brendan Sullivan was the last of them after spring ball, the Iowa transfer. He joined Donovan Leary, who transferred in from Illinois. And so you've got those two combined with Samanza here that are kind of all jockeying right now, but then you still have, I mean, there's more questions around them, which wasn't necessarily the case last year. It's kind of the difference of last year and this year with the quarterback battle, Clip, because Darian Mensah was quarterback 3 last year entering fall camp, and he won the job. Now you have a lot more questions at quarterback, but you have only 2 of your starting offensive linemen return from last year when that wasn't a question mark last year. Your running back, Micah Hughes, now at Oregon, he's a top 10 rusher in the nation. Your top 3 wide receivers are all gone. Your starting tight end is gone. And so there are questions everywhere offensively. And until you can frankly sort out the offensive line, there's only so much you can probably glean from the quarterback position right now. And that's part of why they went out and got another quarterback after the spring game and bringing in Sullivan is because there's clear no front runner right now for that job. And part of that is because so many other jobs are still up for grabs. It is going to be a fascinating August for the Tulane offense to just figure out who can slot into where in a non-conference schedule that does not allow for a break to figure stuff out.
Man, yeah, Corey Gloor joining us, and Tulane is looked at as one of the contenders to certainly win the American. And when you talk about that, you have to say, all right, one of the contenders to go to the college football playoff. I looked at a way too early, group of 5 teams to watch, Corey, and of course it had Boise State. I think James Madison was second on that list, and then Tulane falls in there. Navy was on that list as well. So hearing you talk, that might be a tougher hill to climb while they maybe go through some offensive woes. But how about defensively? Is the defense good enough to help them out early in the year while they figure out everything going on offense?
It should be. And that's why, we talked a lot about to start the issues that might creep in offensively to begin the year for this program. But defensively, even though they have some voids to fill, that is the side of the ball that looks like it is far more ready to go on August 30th than the offensive side right now. Your defensive line, most of that production has returned. You bring in Mo Westmoreland is kind of the big guy up front that they brought in from UTEP, edge rusher, that I think is going to be a major factor in right off the bat how this defense looks. Your linebacking core loses 2 main pieces, one from last year in Tyler Grubbs, but that is pretty short up. But Dallas Winter Johnson transfers in to join Sam Howard, who is an all-conference type player. And then you lose a couple of your corners, including one to the draft and Micah Robinson, but your safeties are back, your nickel is back, and that is where John Summerall makes his hay, is on the defensive side of the ball. And that's what, as high octane as his Troy offenses could have been in his 2 years there, as high scoring as Tulane was last year, the defense is the whole thing with this program right now. And that is in a much better spot to get things started. That is how the accolades are still rolling in right now for Tulane, because there are way too many questions offensively. When you look at that and you say, well, why are people still really looking at this team as a true conference contender? It's the defensive side of the ball that is going to be the key in the first couple weeks of the year in that non-conference to see if they can give the offense what they need to figure itself out against some pretty tough competition because his defense should be legit.
Corey, man, just reading about Tulane football, hearing some of the things you're saying, it's almost like they could be the poster child for 2025 college athletics, especially with a group of five school because of the losing the running back, losing the quarterback, having to bring in these transfers, trying to piece it together. And here at East Carolina, I'm used to it now, unfortunately, because I talk about it every day, but there are still fans that kind of freak out after every single player leaves and moves on to another place. So how are the folks around Tulane handling it, the fans, Corey, the school itself, being a team that gets poached because of all the success that your school has? How's everybody handling that around there?
I think they're coming to terms with just where Tulane is now. And, they would rather be in this spot of, everyone in this league by and large is getting poached. Even a Memphis, which has the biggest budget of anybody in this league, gets poached. They would rather be playing for conference championships and getting poached than on the other side of things. Now, that could be doubly frustrating for a fan base because they want to see this success keep going, and 3 straight title game appearances with a coaching staff change, with roster turnover year after year is hard to do. And so I think there's a logical concern about being able to sustain what has been the golden era of this program's history the last 3 years. But what has now been created is not just an expectation, but a foundation to keep doing this. And the resources that are now being funneled towards this program are the largest they've ever been here. Indoor facility will be opened by camp here on campus. The new shift in how NIL will be done and brought in-house. Tulane was very early on jumping onto that and how that will be constructed here, not just for the football program, obviously, but for across the board. And so, and John Summerall has been very public about he has everything he needs here to make this program keep contending, and not just a group of 5 level, but at a college football playoff possible level. And that is why he turned down, like in North Carolina, being interested in him last year, because he feels like he has what he needs here to do this now, and more is coming. And so I think the fan base is here. This is aligning with just an unprecedented, sustained level of success, and the roster's changing year in and year out. And so it's been a lot to take on for this fan base, but they're much happier taking this on when winning 10 games a year and playing for championships, as opposed to where this team had been for the better part of this century, and that is fighting for bowl eligibility year after year.
Yeah, and I mean, Corey, if we had the playoff intact 2 seasons ago, Tulane would have been in, right? I mean, is it how much excitement do you get personally? Are you like coach speak now that you're an old grizzled broadcaster and you're just like week to week, Clip, we want to win games, or do you think about, hey, let's go to the college football playoff, because it is exciting that we have a seat at the table. It's a very small seat at the very end, but it is a seat, and it's a carrot at the end of the stick for East Carolina and Tulane to go after.
It's hard not to see what this program's done the last few seasons and know that that's a possibility. I mean, to be this strong of a football program, not just in this league but nationally, is still something that I'm not, I'm not foreign to. Like, this is still very exciting to be a part of here, and I think it still is for the fan base as well. Where, like, you also know that if you're a program like Tulane, if you're a program like East Carolina, as we saw last year, the margin for error is smaller than if you're elsewhere. And so Tulane is in the top 25 heading into Thanksgiving, and they are the second highest group of 5 team behind Boise State. And it suddenly is lining up where they might actually have a chance to be in the playoff because the Big 12 was a mess. And so this starts to brew here, and then they come out and they kind of lay an egg against Memphis on Thanksgiving night, and then it saps the whole thing, even though you're playing for a championship the next week.
Right.
And so you know that it still has to absolutely matter week in and week out when you're at this level, because one trip up will be it. But to know that if Tulane does what they are capable of doing as this season goes along, they should be in that discussion when we get to November again, and that is something that will not get old.
Corey, we kind of ranked our easiest to toughest opponents for East Carolina a week or so ago, and we had Tulane either second or third on the list. Basically, you got BYU at NC State, at Tulane. I think we're easily the top three toughest games for East Carolina. I'm looking at Tulane's schedule. I don't know where ECU would fall on that list, easiest to toughest, because there are so many tough games. But what's your perception of? Let's see. You got ECU, you got Army there at home, and they're going to have a new quarterback, so we'll see how good they'll be. Memphis, UTSA on the road. Those look to be kind of your toughest conference games this year.
And those are back to back on the road. At UTSA on a Thursday night, Memphis on a Friday night, and then Army at home. And you're right, it's going to be a different quarterback. That what they do is still what they do, and it really ran over Tulane last year. And so you have that combined with Ole Miss there in the middle of the non-conference, plus a Duke team that should be, I think, pretty good this year. Where Northwestern will be, we'll see. I think East Carolina slots into the middle in terms of strength of opponent for Tulane. The fact that it's a home game, a Thursday night home game, changes the calculus a little bit for that matchup. From my perspective, that the end of the year for Tulane gets pretty nice on paper. You're home to FAU. You go to Temple for your last road game of the year. You host Charlotte to end the year. And so everything is kind of front loaded in the first 2/3 of the year right now for the Green Wave. We'll see how that changes. Obviously, no one expected Army and Navy to be as good as they were last year, and look at what happened. But I'd put East Carolina in terms of difficulty, and with all the questions that they have, like what Blake Harrell's able to do now, first full season with that program, and how that group looks at the middle of this coming year, that's a major question mark to me. But on paper, that East Carolina is probably middle in terms of strength of opponent on the Tulane side of things this year.
Corey Gloor joining us. Corey, man, sometimes fall camp, you just wanted to speed by, get over with, get to the season. But going to be a pretty fascinating one, I would think, for Tulane with the quarterback situation and everything. So you'll have a lot to cover down there. We'll reconvene with you definitely week of ECU Tulane, but maybe even before that, depending on what happens in the non-conference. Always love getting you on the show, talking about whatever with your Corey Gloor. So real quick, let's get a Corey Gloor pro sports depression update. What are the Brewers doing this year?
They're decisively average,
and
that's kind of what I anticipated for them. They suddenly snuck into, they're like a game and a half out of wild card position, but they are young. They show flashes of brilliance, and then they lose the series to the Braves at home, and that's not a great thing to do at this year. So things like that are, that happens with a young team in an organization that did not sign a major league player in the offseason.
Braves stink. Is Giannis going elsewhere, or is he staying in Milwaukee?
No, he's staying.
Okay.
You just saw what Desmond Bain was traded for, and all these mock trades of ESPN desperately wanting Giannis out of Milwaukee. Orlando gave up 4 first-round picks at minimum for Desmond Bain. Giannis would get a franchise like that. It's not going to happen. And Brian Windhorst can pipe down. It ain't happening.
Now, why would Corey say that? And hey, last time I talked to you, I think you were excited about the Bears hire. So you feeling good about the Bears' chances to win some games?
Sure. I mean, they're not going to go 0-17 or however many games are on that schedule now. No, the hiccup of Caleb Williams not wanting to go to Chicago before last year's draft, I think that has been quelled, because I wouldn't have blamed him with with how Chicago has handled quarterbacks in most of their franchise's history. So Yeah, I mean, I'm not sitting here and saying they're going to win a division, but with Ben Johnson now really taking hold of that team, and someone needed to take hold of that team, I'm certainly optimistic about where they're heading. Doesn't mean they're going to be contending with a Detroit or a Minnesota or a Green Bay this year, but they're certainly in a better spot organizationally than they were a couple of years ago.
Man, all right, folks, that might be the most optimistic Corey Gloor pro franchise chat we've ever had. So I'll take it.
And that's even with me saying that my baseball team is average.
Yeah.
I mean, and also knowing that the Bucks are going to go through a pretty hellish year upcoming with no Damian Lillard for the entire season, and still, this is as rosy as it's ever been.
We were doing so well until
Yeah.
then. Corey, appreciate you joining us. Always enjoy it, buddy. Hope you're doing well down there. Going to be an interesting year of football for Tulane, especially early. So we'll keep that under advisement and get you back on the show later on this calendar year.
And if you are intending on doing an on location, I forget the name of your pregame show, but the fifth quarter call-in show, maybe here in New Orleans, just let me know. You can do it in my home office here.
Live from the Corey Gloor homestead, the fifth quarter. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, when the game's over, I will be going immediately to bed, so you will have to keep it down. But
Sure.
that's a weeknight game, and your boy needs his sleep. So.
We could have people call. Well, I guess people don't have landlines anymore. I was call Corey's cell phone to get on the air for the show.
Yeah.
All right, Corey Gloor. See you, buddy.
All right, Clip, Pirate Radio, and to all of you watching / listening,